Hi, Michelle Glass here. Welcome back to another episode in our Chapter 9, Lecture 9 series. We are talking in this video all about dihybrid crosses. Dihybrid crosses are very similar to monohybrid crosses, except here we're going to be looking at two characters instead of one. So instead of just looking at, okay, what is the likelihood of having a purple flower, maybe we're looking at what is the likelihood of having a green seed that is also wrinkled or that is round. So we're looking at a combination of factors together. Now, the important thing of our Mendelian genetics is that we have complete dominance and also independent assortment. The law of independent assortment tells us that each characteristic is inherited separately or independently of every other. So the likelihood of being green seed is not in any way determined by the likelihood of being round or wrinkled. So seed shape and seed color are inherited separately. Now, this is true for our Mendelian genetics, but it's not always the case in every type of genetics. In the future, we'll look at variations on these rules. We can understand our analysis by applying our rules of probability. So the first one to talk about is the rule of multiplication. Now, this rule will actually help us do our dihybrid crosses and kind of simplify the process a little bit. Rule of multiplication says we can multiply the probability of independent events. So we can look at separately the probability of being a green pea, and then we can look at separately the probability of being a round-shaped pea. And then if we want to look at what's the probability of being both green and round, we just multiply the probability of each of those. The other rule is the rule of addition, and we've been using this already. So this is saying you can add together the probability if you're getting the same outcome, but you're doing it in different ways. So for instance, we added together the number of heterozygous individuals, the probability of being a heterozygous offspring, and it didn't matter if you inherited the dominant allele from mom or from dad, or the recessive from mom or from dad. All we were looking at there was what's the likelihood that you inherited one of each, regardless of which parent. So we've already applied that rule. Okay, dihybrid crosses, again, we're looking at two characters. In this case, we're going to look at seed color and seed shape. These are things that Mendel looked at with his pea plants. Now, there are two different ways of tackling a dihybrid cross problem. One involves a super complicated 16-box Punnett square, which you may have done in the past. And you're welcome to keep doing that if you super love it and it makes sense to you, although students often find it confusing and get into trouble trying to complete those. So I'm going to teach you how to do this a different way. Now we're going to look at seed color. Peas can either be yellow or green. Yellow is the dominant form. So I'm going to use the letter Y as my representation of my allele here. My capital Y will represent my yellow color, which is dominant, and my lowercase cursive y will represent my recessive allele, which in this case is green. So if we are crossing parents that are heterozygous hybrids for color, pause and see if you can complete both your Punnett square and complete your phenotypic ratio. We don't care about genotypic ratio in this case. Here will help you. Okay, so hopefully your Punnett square looks like mine. So because our parents were heterozygous, they could either pass on a dominant allele or a recessive allele. And this gives us our classic Mendelian ratio of 3 dominant, which in this case is yellow, to 1 green, which is recessive. Now let's do the same thing over on the other side for our seed shape. So here round is dominant, so I'm going to use my letter R. My capital R is for the dominant form, and my lowercase r is for my recessive form, which is wrinkled. So if you can complete your Punnett square and also do your phenotypic ratio, again, we're not going to ask you to do genotypic ratios for dihybrid crosses. So pause if you need to. Here is your answer. So your note should look like mine. Okay, and we again are seeing our classic Mendelian ratio of 3 dominant to 1 recessive. Okay, but our work is not done because we're not interested in what is the seed color and what is the seed shape so much as the combination. So we're looking at what is the likelihood of being yellow and round and yellow and wrinkled, or green and round or green and wrinkled. And I'm going to figure this out using my rule of multiplication. So notice all I've done here is taken my phenotypic ratio from my yellow-green monohybrid cross, my seed color cross, and I've brought it down here. And I went ahead and I made it as a fraction, so it might be a little bit easier to think about it in that way. But really all we're going to care about is the numerator, so you could just bring the 3's and the 1's. And then let's do the same thing for our seed shape. So take that information from your monohybrid cross and bring it down here. And the rule of multiplication says, well, we can multiply the probability of being yellow times the probability of being round. And then we can do that all the way down the line. So 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 4 is 16. So finish that up. And now we're getting our classic Mendelian ratio for dihybrid cross of heterozygous parents. Look at the numerators. You're going to get a 9 to 3 to 3 to 1 ratio. 9 dominant for both, 3 dominant recessive or recessive dominant, and then 1 recessive for both characteristics. So again, this is another one of those ratios that you can either memorize or you can just figure out every time. That's it for now.